Good morning, everyone. Declare the meeting open for the Finance Committee, Wednesday the 19th of February. And before I commence, I'll ask the General Manager to read the conditions of the meeting.
This meeting is recorded and live streamed for public viewing via the internet in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, with the recording stored and made available to the public for later viewing. The recording is subject to copyright. Members of the public attending or speaking at this meeting will be recorded and publicly broadcast. By attending this meeting, you voluntarily consent to your attendance and participation being recorded. Any part of the meeting that is held in closed session will not be live streamed. Council requests that everyone present is respectful and uses appropriate language. Council does not accept liability for any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Please ensure that all electronic devices, including mobile phones, are switched to silent. Under the Code of Meeting Practice, public recording of this meeting is prohibited without prior authorisation by Council. Council's live streaming of meetings via Facebook is designed to encourage constructive dialogue. We remind users to be digitally responsible and respect their fellow posters. We ask users to keep comments relevant and not to spam or post personal or commercially sensitive information. This includes content that may be defamatory, derogatory, offensive or discriminatory towards Council employees, councillors or other persons or organisations. Failure to follow Facebook House rules will result in comments being deleted, and if this behaviour persists, the user will be blocked.
Thank you.
Just a question, if I may, in relation to that. Is that, do we have to stand or not?
No.
Okay.
Just that I've got to do acknowledgement of country. Let's go through the preliminaries.
So, with that statement, we're not allowed to replay that, anything that happens here today? Nobody's allowed to replay it or use the video today? Is that what the statement I understand to be the case?
As far as I'm aware, it is council's council's property.
So without approval, nobody else can use it.
I'll have to get clarification, Mr. Crawford. Is the live streaming allowed to be rebroadcast?
It's allowed to be shared from the council site, yes.
But without approval, can't be used for anything.
No. Well, the radio uses it.
Just the wording. That's
Do you want better clarification, Councillor Toole?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. So the usage, Councillor Toole is asking for definite clarification onto who and where the live streaming can be used.
I think councillors will take that on notice. I hear Ms Lidgard making some comment from the back there. We'll come back and clarify that, councillors.
Councillor Toole?
Right.
So we really broke opening of the meeting there. Acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay my respects to elders both past and present. And I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present today. Do we have any apologies? No apologies at this stage, so we are unaware of other councillors not attending. Adoption of previous minutes. Now they've obviously been circulated. Somebody move that way. Councillors Nelson and Andrews put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. Declarations of interest. No one has any declarations of interest. Then we move on to 6.1, Establishment of Mayoral Relief Fund. Mr Mooney, would you come? Where is it? Would you come over here, down here? Couldn't see you behind the screen.
No, I've got it on a question.
Oh, right.
Always.
You fell into that.
Mr Mooney.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, councillors. Councillors, the business paper in front of you today has 5 reports for consideration. First report relates to the establishment of the Mayoral Relief Fund for the purposes of a public appeal. This report is to formally advise Council of the establishment of the fund and to also inform Council of the status of its application to the Australian Taxation Office for endorsement of the Mayoral Relief Fund as a deductible gift recipient. Councillors, you'd be aware that on the 23rd of December 2019, the Mayor, Councillor Duncan Gare, announced the establishment of the Mayoral Relief Fund to provide financial assistance to those residents within the Shire impacted by the bushfires. The Mayoral Relief Fund was established to enable donations to be made by members of the public. The fund has been created with a separate bank account where donations can be received and accounted for separate to Council's general fund, its operational accounts. In addition to the initial donation of $50,000 made by Council, public donations to date have totalled $54,147. A total of $93,750 has been distributed to 197 families and individuals who have been impacted by the bushfires. The Mayoral Relief Fund has been established on the basis that it will exist in perpetuity. This will ensure that the fund is able to be used in the event of any future natural disaster. The establishment of the fund subsequently required Council to take a number of steps to enable the Mayoral Relief Fund to be endorsed by the Australian Taxation Office as a deductible gift recipient. To ensure appropriate governance controls are in place for the management of the Mayoral Relief Fund, Council staff have prepared a set of rules, for want of a better term, the governing principles, which were provided to the ATO as part of its application for DGR endorsement. Good news, councillors. We were advised on the 7th of February 2020 that our application for DGR status had been approved and subsequently backdated by the ATO to the 23rd of December 2019. The application was endorsed on the basis of the Mayoral Relief Fund being a public fund for persons in necessitous circumstances. Councillors, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councillor Turland.
Yeah, look, on page 17, we get to that in a little bit later. So where did this $50,000 come from?
Well, you want to, where you go? Mr Mooney.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, we have for a long period had an emergency relief fund, which is reported in our general purpose financial statements. It's an internal restricted reserve. Council, as part of its annual budget, allocates $5,000 into that reserve to ensure that the funds are topped up. The $50,000 has come from that internal reserve.
And the value is in that reserve now?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the value of that reserve is zero. The full $50,000 was transferred into the Mayoral Relief Fund.
We only had 50,000 over the years, 5,000, so it's only 5 years. No, that's 10 years, isn't it? 10 years.
Okay, let's do a bit of history on it so everybody knows. In the early 2000s, 2001, there was a fire at, which you'd remember, I'm sure. There was a fire generated at the back of Mittagong swimming pool through two boys riding motorbikes. One bike crashed, the petrol leaked and got onto the manifold and caught fire. From there, that fire spread right down in that afternoon, right across to virtually Yerrambil. And the trees and the burnt power poles are still there today to prove that. And out of that, Phil Yeo was mayor at the time, and he, because of the damage, there wasn't any form of emergency monies available, so he set up the Mayoral Relief Fund, but not with tax deductibility. So it's been sitting there for all these years, and so it was able to be reopened after the 20th of December with the fire that went through Balmoral. Now there are still pledges to come into the relief fund, $20,000 from Southern Rural Traders, if my memory serves me, $10,000 from the Springett Foundation and $25,000 from Oriane, who are developing Kumunji Chelsea Gardens. So that money is yet to come in. We've got to put a time frame on when we will close off the Mayoral Relief Fund, so it can be then put back into mothball, so to speak, but will be available. But those are the monies that have been raised, and there will be a full distribution being published and circulated from today, with the fact that the Mayoral Relief Fund is now tax deductible, and that'll be published be released to the press this week. So everybody is very clear where the money's gone, who it's gone to, and how much. And to those who have contributed to it, I've got to go to the arrange with the Barrel Bowling Club. They opened a Mayoral Relief Fund, and they have raised monies which are going to be presented. So there's money still coming in, and as Councillor Turlin said, where did the 50,000 come from? From restricted reserves, and we will see how much is left when we do the balance sheet. Any other questions? But I will be writing to all those donors that I know that can be found with addresses. Some people made anonymous donations, but those who have made donations, I'll be writing a personal letter to. So we move Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor Marquardt. Is there any discussion? And before I put it, I think it was a great initiative by a former mayor to set it up so we could be on the ground running within, and that monies were distributed within 2 days, 3 days, and to the staff, and I should acknowledge this, they worked through the weekend of the 20th, that weekend up to the 23rd, to get all the cash cards that they could to distribute to those fire affected, and the staff did a terrific job there, and we got out $50,000 before Christmas Day. So that was really, really good. Put the recommendation, all in favour, against, carried. We move to 6.2, Water Polo New South Wales Country Championships. Move Councillor Scandrett, seconded Councillor Turland. Is there any discussion on that? Put it, all in favour, those against, carried. Good morning, Councillor Whipper. You were here for the beginning of the meeting, but I hadn't said hello. Now, 6.3, implementation of purchase card system. I'll ask Mr Mooney to introduce this too.
Thank you, and again through you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the purpose of this report is to advise Council of the intended expansion of its purchase card expense management system and to seek approval to increase its current credit facility to $300,000. Council currently utilises a number of different payment methods for the purchase of goods and services for maintenance and program activities, which includes the use of purchase cards. Council is currently expanding its use of purchase cards to operational areas of Council, and as a result is seeking approval to increase its current credit facility from $150,000 to $300,000. The expansion of the use of purchase cards will provide staff with a convenient, low-cost method of purchasing goods and services of small value. They have strong internal controls to ensure transparency and accountability in their use, and monthly limits are used to control expenditure. The use of Council's purchase cards has been the subject of a number of internal audits, and no adverse findings have been identified in relation to the use of these cards and the appropriateness of expenditure incurred. A credit facility in financial terms, councillors, is considered equivalent to borrowings, albeit short-term, as expenditure incurred on purchase cards are paid at the end of each month. As such, a formal council resolution is required to increase the credit facility, and the council seal is to be affixed to all documents approving this increase. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Councillor Turlin?
So the credit facility is the 300,000 that the bank will put up as the amount that people can go to within council. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's correct, councillor.
Okay. Second thing is, who's got them now?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the current holders of the cards are essentially executive staff and senior management, albeit the operational staff who we are intending on rolling this, facility out to are the ones who are in most need of it. The benefits that it will provide in terms of the efficiencies in our outdoor staff, our operational staff being able to make short trips to purchase small value items rather than having to come all the way back to Moss Vale is one aspect of where we will significantly benefit. The other benefit is, councillor, is that the transaction costs associated with purchase cars are significantly less than other payment methods such as cheques and EFTs. So there are also broader corporate overhead savings that will be achieved through rolling out and expanding this program.
Why not a debit card, so the money goes into an account? A debit card would be much cheaper. It's nil, no cost.
Councillor, this is, through you, Mr Mayor, this is the expense management facility that's available to council. We've looked at all options and we believe that this is the best option moving forward.
Well, I just think a debit card would be that you top it up as it's needed every month or every week. Anyway, that's one question. And so how many do you think of these cards are going to go out? 10, 20, 30, 40?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we'd be looking at rolling out, in the first instance, a rollout program of probably 20. That would largely involve our team leaders within our operational areas, infrastructure, water and sewer.
And so they're not to be used for private use, for lollies, chocolates, drinks and...
Through you, Mr Mayor, a very good question, councillor. We have the ability and we currently do lock down merchant categories. It's one of the internal controls that are built into the use of the cards. So effectively, right now, we lock down certain merchant categories. So no, you can't go to your local Coles and purchase your weekly shopping. You can't go to entertainment type venues. They are strictly limited to the merchant categories that we set within the cards.
So for instance, if you went to get some fuel and you added a few other goodies in there, how would you know?
I'll answer that question in two parts for you, Mr Mayor. For starters, we will lock down those particular cards for fuel use. And with our current fuel cards which are available to operational users and also leaseback users are already locked down so that you can't go and buy your Sunday newspaper. Yeah, it's only to buy fuel and in some cases AdBlue where the trucks require it for diesel purposes.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Turlin. Councillor Nelson?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, somebody who worked in the system and used the cards and had to be accountable every month for monies that were spent on the card, I could only support this and what the finance department does in checking. And of course, the manager of each individual has to also sign off. So there's really good checks and balances incorporated into this system. So I haven't got a problem. I'll be happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. So you're foreshadowing moving this. Councillor Scandra?
Just a small question. Does this mean, Mr Mooney, that we will no longer require trade accounts at trade facilities? We'll move to this, or will we have both?
Mr Mooney?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll start off by clarifying that our intention will always be to support small business. That goes without saying.
Of course.
Now, whether we continue to utilise their trade cards or whether we move to purchase cards, effectively will be based on patterns of use. But irrelevant of the use, it will still mean that we'll continue to support small business.
I wasn't questioning that. It was just whether you're going to have a credit facility at the local hardware or the co-op or whatever versus just moving it all into this system.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for efficiencies, I would dare say longer term, it will be one consolidated system that we are utilising.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other questions? Put it all in favour. Against, carried. Noting that was seconded by Councillor Scandrett. 6.4, budget review to 31st of December 2019. Mr Mooney.
Thank you again, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this report presents the December quarterly review of the 2019-20 budget. Councillors, a review of the 2019-20 budget as of the 31st of December 2019 has identified a range of adjustments required to both income and expenditure. The overall effect of these adjustments is that the budget position for 2019-20 remains a balanced budget position. Council's major variations identified as part of the review are shown on page 17 of the business paper. I'm happy to speak to individual items as required, and noting that we do have a number of members of staff here also available should questions require more technical explanations. However, I will essentially leave that up to the questions.
Okay, so we'll go.
Before I finish, if
Yes,
I may,
you're
Mr.
away.
Mayor. In addition to the major variations outlined in the report, there are also a number of recommended adjustments to Council's Capital Works program, and councillors, they can be found on pages 11 to 13 of attachment 1. Adjustments which have been identified as funds to be carried over into the 2021 budget total $3.646 million. So councillors, they're what we typically refer to as expenditure revotes. The funds are not lost, they are simply carried over as a timing issue from one financial year to the next. Those adjustments relate to the timing of delivery of the Station Street upgrade, Church Road amenities building and the Australian Avenue pumping station. Finally, councillors, the uncommitted balance of the contingency fund as of the 31st of December 2019 was $27,385. Obviously subject to any adjustments that were made at today's meeting. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Turlin.
First one, the...
Can you lower your mic so... Yeah.
Yep, that's better. So the dividend from Southern Phones is just gone straight into to do a balanced budget within this sheet on page 17. Is that how I understand it? That's the major reason why we have a balanced budget, is because we're using the Southern Phones.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's not correct, councillor.
No. Okay.
If you actually look down under the header reserve adjustments, transfer to Southern Phone reserve, increase in expense 854. What we have effectively done is we have said that income has now been brought to account and we are restricting it to a reserve for a future intended use of council. And I dare say that that will be a large part of our discussions as part of the 2020-21 budget deliberations. But certainly it has not been used, to prop up the budget result as part of the December quarterly review.
I think the other thing, there's two things here. One is the state government. We were going to run a deficit budget, and that's in the background on the page 16. And then through the local councils throughout the state absolutely hammering the government into relation to this, they removed, they said they'd pay the shortfall of the emergency services contribution. So that brought us back then to a balanced budget. And if you remember, during the bushfire crisis, I sent an email around to everyone that we were running through the cash reserves and that we would be looking at taking up to $30,000 out of the Southern Phones fund that was non-allocated at that stage. The donations came into the point to nullify that. So there were no monies taken out of the Southern Phones reserves reef dividend, thank you, Madam GM, to prop up the mayoral relief fund. So the Southern Phones was never touched, and as such, that's why the figure is still 854,000. Councillor Turland?
The purchase, well, it says purchase of the $600,000 for the shredder at the RRC. What's the cost of the fire to date in relation to what's happened out there? There's no budget in saying it's going to cost us 200,000, 300,000. So where's the cost for that? It must be borne by already. There must be some costs borne, and where are they?
Well, through you, Mr. Mooney.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So, Councillor, the report is up to the 31st of December. Those costs, if they are considered material in nature, will be reported to the May Finance Committee as part of the March quarterly review.
The two development services contractors and then employees, how can it be a neat 500,000 each, one in, one out? How can it be that? You must know what it is at that stage, so why is it a neat transfer in?
Mr. Mooney?
Through you, Mr Mayor. It's a neat figure, Councillor, because it's an estimate. It's an estimate based on what has been spent to date in terms of contractor expenses, and it considers likely salary savings as a result of positions which have been vacant year to date, and also positions which are currently in the process of recruitment. It's a neat figure because we don't budget down to the exact dollar. It's a reallocation of funds which is now closely aligned, both recruitment expenses, contractor expenses and salary savings, with expenditure incurred year to date.
We actually have it. Every quarter we get this, we seem to have a balance of this particular fee going back and forwards. If I can find it here in another past sheet, budget review in October.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Turland, you are correct that has been a variation that has been reported over a number of quarters. That essentially reflects the difficulties council has had in recruiting a number of key positions. That has been something that has been the case for some 12 to 18 months. Some good news is that we're now starting to have success in filling some of those key positions. The reality is, though, for business to continue within that part of the world, we've required to bring in external contractors, and as a matter of housekeeping as part of the quarterly review, we've done the necessary adjustments to reflect using outside contract labour as opposed to internal staffing resources.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but for instance in October, an increase in contract was at 357, and so then we have an increase in contractors here of 500. So does that mean it's $857,000 we've paid in increase between those quarters, or is this just an add-on to the 357, then you get to 500,000? Does it keep growing?
Can I just, through you, Mr Mayor, can I just clarify which report you're looking at?
This is the October
So
one.
the title of that report, Councillor, is
Budget Variation Income.
Is that the year
expenses.
end? Is that the year end report?
No, this is in October.
So the September quarterly review would have been reported
got
to
that
the
here too.
November Finance Committee.
Yeah, I probably
So
got
if you
that
take
here
the
too.
figure from the November Finance Committee and the report from now, then those two figures would be the combined total of what we've transferred out of staff allocations into contractor allocations. But I would suggest that what you're looking at there, the October report, would be the final year-end adjustment for the 2018-19 financial year.
Well, I would have it here, but what I'm trying to find out is this movement keeps going up every month, every quarter. So what is the budget for the whole year in relation to these changes between the development employees and the development services contractors? I mean, anyway, I'll take it on. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to get early to ask questions, but we missed out that opportunity. The balance tank.
Do you want that on notice?
Yeah, I'll have it on notice, so I want to like to
Okay,
have that
so
figure
the-
pinned down,
the-
so it's not a variable all the time. But
Mr Mooney?
So just through you, Mr Mayor, to clarify, the question we've noticed, a question that we're taking on notice, which we're happy to do, Councillor Turlin, is to provide a summary of what movements, budget movements for the current financial year for development staff contractors reported and staff reported to the Finance Committee. Is that correct?
correct.
Thank you.
Mittagong Pool balance tank, now $120,000. By my memory, I didn't think that's what we were told in our briefing sessions, that balance tank would cost.
I'm not sure what you were saying, Councillor.
Well, I'm saying that
Tom.
we were never told it was going to cost $120,000 to fix the balance tank in Mittagong Pool. We were told a lot less figure than that. I think it was $30,000 by memory.
Can I clarify that? If my memory serves me right, what was mentioned at that session was what we had spent to bring the pool into service for the season, not what we had actually was going to spend in fixing the balance tank.
No, we had a statement on what the balance tank was going to cost us, and it was not $120,000 done by Mr. Paul.
Well, I don't recall that.
hang on,
Mr.
we
Paul, do you
will-
want to answer that? Yeah, please.
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Mr. Paul.
Councillor Turlin is correct. At the time, we had an estimate. Now, that was based on a preliminary inspection by the contractor. You've got to understand it's a confined space.
I understand that, yeah.
So until they actually got in there and actually started the work, it was difficult for them to give an estimate. The reality is that the cost of that work has increased because there's two chambers in that. They weren't aware of the two chambers. They'd been in and said, yeah, it's this much. When they got in there, oh, it's two chambers. I've got to go over the other side and do the other chamber. So the cost increased based on that outcome. It is what it is. I had to get the pool open. It was the only way I could get the pool open. I got the pool open. That's what it cost.
That's right. You've answered my question that I've asked. The stabilisation of the Memorial Hall Mittagong Playhouse, it's $100,000. That's increased from what we've been told only last week.
Well, remembering this is end of December, budget review to the end of December, not January.
Well, I
So
don't-
there will be an adjustment on the next Finance Committee in relation to these expenses, I would think. Mr Paul, would you like to comment?
Again, through you, Mr Mayor, to clarify, what we are doing there is providing a budget for works where we had no budget. So there were works that were done last year to actually inspect the hall and to where we got to the point where we knew we had a problem. So that allocation there is to cover all of those costs, including the work that's been done to, stabilise the hall. So that's the budget that's been allocated to cover that, to get us to a point where we've got a bit of an understanding of what's going on there. We've stabilised the building. There's a request there now for funds to put together, a specification and go out for a tender for specialist advice to go in there now and actually take the ceiling out, take the air conditioning out and actually look at the structure and start to provide us with a solution to move forward.
I understand that, and I know the work was done in the new year. The new year, not this. This budget here takes us up to the end of the 31st of December. Is that how I understand it?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm trying to do is there in the front page, but what I'm trying to understand is that this is up to the 31st, and we've got $100,000 here. So is it going to be $160,000, or are you going to take the
Okay.
60 that's been paid out of the 100?
No,
How's this going to
I'll
work?
hand this back to Mr Mooney.
Look, I'll make a comment, Mr
All
Mayor,
right.
if I may. Look, Councillor, what we are doing here, we do this in arrears. The CFO has said this is to the 31st of December, but what we do is we have to make a judgment about what we think is going to be the cost. So what we have done here is we've provided a budget for that preliminary investigation and for that propping. Has the money all been spent as of the 31st of December? No, it hasn't.
No.
But based on what we knew at the 31st of December, if you want to put it in those terms, what we're saying is we need 100 grand for that preliminary investigation and to stabilise that building. So that's what that budget is. I don't expect to exceed that. That's the cost.
Cornerstone licence. What is a cornerstone licence?
Through you, Mr Mooney.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's a ongoing licensing fee in relation to council's recently implemented recruitment software. So we've recently updated and released new software which is aimed at improving the recruitment process from cradle to grave within council, and that's the licence fee associated with that particular product.
So it's $42,000 to use a software package.
Councillor
It's beyond me. Yeah,
Mr Mooney.
they'll understand it more than me. Incredible. The interest we make every year is about $4 million on the 180 odd million. Where is that put in the system? Is it just goes into...
No, it goes into long projection for the expenditure for the next 4 years, or Mr Mooney?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, there are very, very strict rules, legislative rules, as to how council allocates its investment income. Effectively, externally restricted income, section 711 income, domestic waste income, grant income, any investment income earned on those funds can only be used for the purpose of what the funds were collected for. So for that specific purpose, any investment income on externally restricted assets are allocated to those specific reserves. Water and sewer, as separate operations, are also required to have investment income from their cash reserves allocated specifically to water and sewer. The third component is then general fund operations, which is investment income that we report as part of our broader operations of council. So if you can think about it in three separate pots, for want of a better term, or funds, there's externally restricted assets, then there's water and sewer, and then there's general fund. But I can assure you, councillor, there are very, very stringent rules around how we calculate that interest and how we allocate that interest to those specific parts of our operation.
So they actually have to stay within there. If the income comes from the RRC, it's got to stay within that package.
For domestic waste, that's correct, councillor, through you, Mr Mayor.
Well, the reserve adjustment, transfer from waste reserve, increase in income, $600,000. That hasn't kept within the RRC in the waste reserve. It's actually gone into this budget variation here.
Through you,
Yeah,
Mr Mayor, that
Mr Mooney.
that $600,000 is to simply offset the cost of purchasing the green waste flow shredder. That's not a cost of general fund operations. That's a cost of waste management operations. So taking the $600,000 increase in expense, the $600,000 increase in transfer from reserve, those two effectively contra themselves out.
It's great because now you've explained the 600 in out where it's used for, and it's a perfect explanation. I understand that. Now, we've just had the worst fires and we've spent a lot of money. I know when we were at, on the 29th, we were in with Wallandilly with the Local Government Association Chairman, Linda Scott, by memory, and Wallandilly could tell us that they had spent $1.7 million at that date on the fires beyond their budget. And there's nothing in here about what we have spent in relation to water, which would...
But it's the end of December, Councillor
We
Turl.
had the fire in December. There was still 10 days between that and the fire. We have expended a lot of money. We should know what we have spent up to that date.
Okay.
Now, Wallandilly could say, we spent $1.7
Okay,
million on
Councillor
the
Turl,
29th.
you want to have a go, Councillor
No, it's not a
Mr.
have
Mooney.
a go. I beg your pardon. I was asking a
Councillor-
solid... Well, you should
Councillor
be
Turland.
restricting what you say. Have a
Councillor
go.
Turland.
You need to apologise.
I unreservedly apologise to you, Councillor
good.
Turland. I have
Have
never...
a go. It's not a go. It's a
for
question I'm
goodness
asking.
sake, Councillor Turland. Mr Mooney.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So
Sheesh.
Councillors, Wallandilly obviously were impacted by the Green Wattle Creek fire several weeks before us. So in terms of the accumulation of costs, they obviously were in a better position back in early January. That's not to say, councillors, we do have an idea at the moment as to what actual costs have been to date. Actual costs to date, and again, these figures aren't to be accurately relied upon, but I'm happy to provide them. Actual expenditure to date is between $250,000 to $300,000. Notwithstanding that, we have orders and commitments in the system worth several $100,000. What we are in the process of doing at the moment, councillors, is between shared efforts between our infrastructure branch, our assets branch, our finance branch and our water and sewer branch, is going through and reviewing that expenditure and looking at where there is a legitimate claim that we can make either under Section 44 orders, which are claims that we can legitimately make against the Rural Fire Service, claims that we can make against a 21-day emergency period of what was formerly known as the NDRRA, the National Disaster Recovery Relief Arrangements, and then also the broader infrastructure arrangements where we get 2 years. So, councillors, it would be improper for us at this point in time to provide you with a figure as to what the fire will cost council, because right now, what staff are doing as part of not only establishing recovery meetings, which will commence tomorrow and working with the community, but we're also going through and we're analysing the costs that we've incurred to date, and we're making sure that where we have legitimate claims that we can lodge with the state government through the various state agencies, we'll do so. Until we've lodged those claims, we won't be in a position to provide you with what the final costs are. What I can assure you is that we're going to work as quickly and as hard as we can to get those figures sorted out so that we can bring back what the figure will be. Can I suggest that would likely be the May Finance Committee, and that would be something that we would be able to wrap up as part of the March quarterly review? If we're unable to do that, it will be with the good reason that we are still pursuing claims and still making sure that we can claim every possible dollar we can through the relevant state agencies. I trust that in part goes some way to answering your question, Councillor.
Very good. Thank you very much for answering the question, because it wasn't having a go. It was a solid question that I believe needed to be answered.
Thank you, Councillor Turlin. Councillor Scandrett.
Mr Mayor, and I do note on that topic that water can be claimed under Section 44. So
that's a question. Can water be claimed under Section 44?
I do note, is what I said. I'm just leading into
Well,
something.
I'm clarifying.
Yeah.
Is that correct, Mr Mooney?
I'll have to take that on notice.
You'll have to take that on notice.
I believe you'll find that under Section 44 you can claim water. So that comment you made at the extraordinary meeting.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, that will be clarified with staff. I'm not going to say yes, it is. You're saying it is correct.
I'm just.
Mr Mooney will have to take it on notice. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. What is the current expectation of the time frame to the Playhouse to when it might be open again?
Wow. I think that's going to be a council resolution.
Well, we did hear that it was going to be 2 years, but it's clearly going to be more than that.
Well, no, the council hasn't got a budget to repair the Playhouse. Council hasn't got a costing on how much it's going to cost to repair the Playhouse, and then there has to be a resolution from a future budget to allocate how much money's to repair it. So, I mean, I think that's an open-ended question, Councillor.
I think you've answered my question in a way, Mr Mayor. But of course, the subsequent question is have we allocated resources for theatre groups and the like to use other facilities in the Shire, which may not necessarily be.
Okay, so the question is well, really, that's an operational matter as opposed to a budgetary matter.
Well, it might be a budget. We paid $7,500 for the hire of Chev.
Then I pass that across to Mr Mooney.
We would need to take that on notice, Mr.
That would have to be taken on notice.
Cash reserves, Mr Mooney. I referred to this at the last council meeting. I suggested there might be as much as 40 million allocated in our cash reserves. Madam GM, you sort of said it may be, but
I did not.
No,
40
no.
million.
well, anyway, my question is, and this could be
Can we make
Sorry,
sure that
Councillor
we
Turner
do
had
not
15
try and
minutes.
lead staff into making that they have made comments that they have not made, and that when you do make public comment, that you make sure that the monies that you publicly comment on have not been previously allocated into budgetary projects.
I'll make my question now, Mr Mayor, and that is, and it could be on notice, Mr Mooney, could you come back to councillors with a breakdown of what the cash reserves are and what is unallocated, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to take that question now. Councillor Scandrett, if you refer to page 14 of attachment 1, that report, that schedule there, provides you with what, based on current estimates, we are forecasting our projected year-end result reserve balances to be for both our externally restricted reserves and our internally restricted reserves. Councillors, I'm going to completely avoid stepping into the politics of this. However, I'm going to make a statement which is very clear. There is not $20 million in uncommitted funds sitting in Council's cash reserves. If that was the case, we would be suggesting that the funds that we have set aside for our employee leave entitlements and our plant replacement program would effectively be uncommitted. It would also mean that the funds that we have allocated for projects which were carried over from last financial year to this financial year, which are partway in completion or are in the process of being completed, would not be able to be completed. All of those reserves listed there within internal restrictions have an identified purpose, councillors. As I said, I'm not here to play the politics, I'm here to just deal with the facts, and the facts are that as it currently stands, we have $26 million that we will have allocated based on current projections in internal reserves at the end of the year.
Councillor Scandrett.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Yeah, 26 million. In terms of cash at bank, in our reserves in that area, Mr Mooney, it's about 182, 83 at the moment. Could you comment on that basis, how much of that is allocated?
Mr Mooney.
Through you, Mr Mayor, again, councillors, the current cash investment balances of $180 million are based on where we are right now in terms of our capital expenditure program. As you'd be aware, councillors, we've commenced work on a number of significant projects over the past 2 to 3 months. As a result of those projects and a range of other capital works projects that we intend on delivering before 30 June based on current forecasts, we're suggesting that our reserve balance will decrease anywhere between $30 to $40 million over the next 6 months. Now, again, councillors need to be aware that there are external factors which impact on our ability to deliver those works. Councillors will be kept up to date as part of the quarterly review process as to what factors will impact on the timing of those projects. But as it currently stands, we are anticipating a significant reduction in our cash balances within the short and medium term. And I'm even happy to provide further details on that, councillor, that if you refer back to the long-term financial plan that Council adopted back in June last year, based on the unprecedented levels of capital works that the Council had adopted, our projected cash reserve balance for consolidated revenue within the 2-year time frame, memory serves me correct, up until the end of 2021, decreases to around the $90 to $100 million mark. Obviously, it goes without saying, councillors, you don't have the unprecedented level of capital works as what you have adopted as part of the most recent operational plan without having a significant reduction in your cash reserves.
Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I guess, and I'm working on the 31st of December, Mr Mooney, so it was about 182 million at that time. But, and I know we've drawn down since then. But I'm just going to drill in a bit, if I may. Of the 182 at that time, how much of those cash reserves, investments we hold, was not allocated through any Section 94 or any other type process of that 182.
Oh,
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
I can take that on notice.
Can I clarify the question if I may?
Sure.
So are we specifically dealing with externally restricted assets? Is that correct?
Well, that's where the heart of it is, because I'm saying what is allocated and therefore what is not allocated.
Councillor, I would suggest it's a difficult question to ask because as of December, that is a time and point report. What we are presenting as part of this Finance Committee agenda is what we are proposing and what we are forecasting will be the balance as of 30 June. This is a much more reliable report to be working off than a point in time investment report as of the 31st of December.
I guess so, Mr. Mooney, but I guess what I'm saying, and you talk about strict rules within Treasury if you wish, I'm asking of all the assets we hold, the cash reserves we hold, what are not committed under those statutory rules?
I think that question is... Look, Councillor Scandrett, I'm not sure what you're trying to get out of this other than comments you've made that the council can take some money out of its $180 million, which I've heard you say.
You're exactly right, Mr. Mayor.
And you can't do
it's a
it
finance
because
meeting.
Mr. Mooney, if you have listened, has gone through the restricted assets.
Yes.
We have a budget before us which has projects and monies allocated to it, and the budget is going to be balanced. So there is no monies.
Mr. Mayor, let me go another way. What is the current
I'm not
restricted
going-
assets amount, right, in our cash reserves? What does that part of that represent? I'm happy to take it on notice, Mr. Mayor.
No, I don't know what the question
I'd like to
is.
make a comment, if I may.
Yeah, Mr. Paul, now this will be the last one, Councillor Scandrett.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I sort of understand where Councillor Scandrett is going, and I'll try to choose my words carefully, but I get the sense that you are on a fishing expedition to understand, is there any hollow logs or cash unallocated that can be allocated in some way?
Not fishing, just asking.
Okay, well, what I'm gleaning from what you're asking is there unallocated cash there that can be allocated to projects? The reality is you deal with that each year in your budget, and we have a long-term financial plan. You need to look at both of those documents and you'll understand then what the plan is over a longer period. You can't just take a point in time and go, well, how much cash is there, can I spend it? You've got to look at the long-term position. So we provide you with a budget each year that tells you on an annual basis where you're going to be, and that links into the long-term financial plan. You need to look at all of that in its entirety. Just saying at a point in time, how much cash have I got there, can I spend some? That's not how it works, I'm sorry. So be quite happy to sit down and have a conversation with you in the company of the CFO, obviously, to talk to you about that, to try and give you a better sense of how all that hangs together. But I can assure you there are no hollow logs. I'll say that again, there are no hollow logs. The report you've got before you indicates what money has been restricted internally. That's the money that I guess that council has made a decision to park for certain things. To some degree, there is money there that council can choose to use for different purposes, and I'm talking about the capital projects reserve and the property development reserve. They are our two main go-tos where there's an ability for council to allocate money for specific projects, if you like. The rest of the reserves that are internally restricted, quite frankly, you can't really touch.
No, exactly. That's what the
ELE reserve, plant reserve, they are things that are there, and they're always there, but they ebb and flow with the needs of the business. So, to be blunt, there is not a lot of room for council in terms of using reserves because most of it is there for purposes that really council is agreed has to be there in the short to medium term to meet our commitments or our needs. So
Mr.
happy to have
Hall,
that conversation with the CFO if you want to come in.
Sure, and thank you. That actually is a very precise answer, but just without the numbers.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
My other questions, Mr. Mayor? No, that's fine. It's an open forum finance meeting.
Councillor Scandrett, I'm asking that when you ask your questions, that I know that you've been here for a period of time and you are asking questions that I thought you would have more knowledge on. But what's your next question?
In terms of, just a procedural one, if I may, Mr Mooney, that reference that Councillor Turlin made to the Cornerstone software, I think it'd be worthwhile in future saying Cornerstone staff management.
So you were just asking for a rewording?
Yeah, staff management
Through
software.
you, Mr Mayor,
yeah.
take that on board,
Just
councillor.
some
That's not an appropriate description, and we'll certainly take that on board for future reports.
I like the other thing on page 33, Mr Mayor, which is in the attachment 2, major capital projects greater than 5 million progress. It's the fold out.
Yes.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just very quickly, we're actually skipping into the next report there, so
Well, I'll
that's
pick it
actually
up
part
there.
of the operational
Sure.
plan. So
Okay, thank you.
just procedurally, if we can hold off questions for that until the next report.
Okay,
Sorry,
Councillor Nelson.
No.
Oh, Councillor Whipper's back on.
So this is a question that's not loaded. So it's just out of curiosity and a simple question without an agenda. Mental Health Week on page 18. I'm just wondering, they're in reserve, those funds. So there's $3,370 allocated to Mental Health Week. I know it goes back to 17. I'm just wondering if we've actually utilised any funds on Mental Health Week promotion or activities.
Is there somebody who's available? Mr Pepping, would you be more aware of this?
A resolution of council.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we've ever expended any of that money or if it's earmarked for anything.
Okay, we might take
Happy
that
to take it on notice.
notice.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think through the chair, through the mayor.
Mr Pepping.
So that that was a council resolution. So it was taken out of the contingency fund in 1920. We'll have to check to see whether or not it's actually been accessed by the recipients.
All right, can we have that? Do you want the? I'll get a sort of consensus. Councillor Turland has put one on notice. Councillor Scandrett and now Councillor Whipper. Do you want those circulated in the weekly circular?
Yes.
Okay. So those answers will come through the weekly circular. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks. Just in relation to sale of road reserves, I was just wondering if there's any more land that council could sell, because I believe that money's sale of land is being used to pay down the loan on the indoor leisure centre. And that was Councillor mine and Councillor Turlin's idea on this, but we use those monies to purchase the land for the extension of the Barrel Cemetery and the Wattle Street car park. Right, okay. What's the, do we know what the interest rate is on the loan for the indoor leisure centre?
Through you,
Mr Mayor, the two parts of that question, if I may answer both parts. Councillor Nelson, to start with, a council briefing has been booked in for early March. There has been a long outstanding resolution on the books for council to review its surplus lands. My apologies, that has taken us some time to get that ready to a point of where it's ready for presentation to councillors. So we'll be having a briefing within the next few weeks as to identified surplus land. The second part, councillor, I will have to take that question on notice as to what the current interest rate is we're paying
That's fine, yeah.
for the Moss Vale Aquatic Centre, but certainly information that's readily available and easily gained.
I'm just alluding to the idea that if that loan rate is high, if you pay more off the indoor leisure loan, does that give you more ability to utilise additional loans to then do other projects?
Through you, Mr Mayor,
Mooney?
if I may answer that at a high level, obviously any loan involves break costs, so that's something that we would need to consider as part of any early retirement of any loan that council currently holds. Notwithstanding though, I think that's a conversation for probably as part of the annual budget, but we'll certainly provide you with the interest rate as part of the questions we've taken on notice through the weekly circular.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Scandrett. Councillor Turland.
Following on from Councillor Nelson, The Franklin Street sale of council's property, it's not in any of these budgets. Have we not got all the money in or any of the money in yet to date?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the terms and conditions of those agreements that there were delayed settlements for both lots, and that would be information that would be available to councillors and was available to councillors through the confidential reports. The reason why the sale of Franklin Street hasn't been brought to account as part of this review, I'll be honest, it was ultimately my call, and I've made a call not to bring it to account. We are still yet to finalise the costs associated with getting the lots ready for market. That includes, works that we undertook in terms of getting a better presentation of the site. So once I've satisfied with those costs, we'll be bringing the sale of those 2 lots to account as part of the budget process.
Well, on that note, I can't remember any statement in closed council, confidential, that there was a delayed settlement.
Oh, I can.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there was, and I prepared the papers, so I know that...
Well, we
they've
don't have the
included it.
papers anymore, you've got them, so, we're
Well,
going on our
if you
memory at
wish,
the moment.
If you wish, they can. They were confidential, but they are still on file. And I'll say, if you want to read those, then they'll be made available so you can see that report again.
Well, the main thing I want to find out is the timeline. Is it going to go on for 1 year, 2 year, 10 years?
Well, that was in the report as well.
Well,
Through you, Mr Mayor,
Mr. Mooney.
I'm happy to provide this information because it's public information that's now available on our contracts register. For one lot, it was 6-month settlement, and for the second lot, it was a 12-month settlement. All information regarding contracts of that size are reported in council's contracts register.
so one would think we're nearly up to the 6 months very shortly.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if memory serves me correct, contracts were exchanged early December, mid-December. So we're still a bit off,
Councillor Scandrett.
I think contracts were exchanged about the 15th of December, just after
Yes,
the
yes,
rescission motion, and because I asked Mr Paul. Yes, and that information I think should be reported through the weekly circular as well, through the contracts register, Mr Mooney, just simply because the public, and as you say, it's open information, should be aware of the successful tenderer and the conditions that were involved in that. So I'd ask to
nothing
add
should
that
be
to-
hidden in relation to that.
Add that there and get that complete detail out there. That was my main question there, thank you.
Okay, well, we've discussed one item for half an hour, so we're doing pretty well. Well, who's going to move it? Councillor Whipper and Markwart. Is there any further discussion? Put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. Last item, 6.5, Quarterly Progress Report Operational Plan. Mr Mooney. Good morning, Ms Lagarde.
Morning, councillors. This is the regular quarterly report on our progress towards achieving the operational plan for 2019-20. So for the period 1st of October 2019 to the 31st of December, this report provides an overview of council's progress in achieving the commitments outlined in the operational plan for 2019-20. It includes key achievements and areas which require further attention, and also outlines projects and programs which have been placed on hold during the reporting period. The report shows that overall council is on track and progressing well in achieving the 205 annual deliverables for the 2019-20 financial year.
Okay, you've got a couple of questions. Councillor Markwart, can you pull your mic down, please?
Yes, thank you. Just on the mic being up, just a point administratively. I can't see who's pressed the button on other microphones. I don't know if that can be addressed in some way. It's useful to know who's speaking and what have you.
Ah, I see your point.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a point on the side there. Okay, Mike.
Don't forget helmets.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Good idea.
Councillor Markwart.
Okay. I'm just talking about here the budget amounts regarding the sewage systems, which is some $40-odd million and what have you. I guess I'm reminded of the fact that we passed a climate emergency relatively recently. There's increasing water usage and above average temperatures and such like. So we've got 3 sewage plants that are due to be upgraded. We're doing the preliminary planning now and budgeting, what have you. So my question is, have the designs taken into account the expected worsening of the climate over the next 20 or 30 years? Are we looking at and building that into the design, possibly recycling of water, more potable water? Are we taking those things into account? My focus is on making this community more resilient, and I think water is a key factor. In the light of climate change, we've got to spend every dollar to make that water more reliable for the future for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Markwart. That's a fairly broad one. Mr. Paul.
Look, through you, Mr Mayor, look, I can only really answer that briefly. The Manager of Assets has actually left the room, unfortunately. It would have been nice for him to be here. Look, the short answer is yes. Certainly very much a focus that we want to make sure that as best we can we use whatever technology is available to make these plants smart in the way they operate in terms of their energy use, chemical use, etc. But also the reuse of water is certainly something we're going to be focusing on as well. So all of those things are in our frame of mind. We're shortly to let a contract for the detailed design for Barrel, and through that process that'll be emphasised.
I guess my question is, have they been included?
As I said, they will be. They will be a priority. It's like everything though, it'll be about available technology and the cost.
Mr. Paul, just following on from Councillor Markwart, do we have an exact time frame or an approximate time frame on the commencement of these upgrades? They've been on the books now for 3 years.
Look, through you, Mr Mayor, what I think, well, what I've already spoken to staff about is that I'm going to organise a briefing to update councillors on the status of these projects and the timelines. Like everything, when you get into these projects, it's external factors that hold these things up, and with respect to the EPA has required certain things of us in terms of stream water flows and assessments and whatever else that weren't previously expected to be part of the process. Now we've had to do that because the EPA has directed it. Now that's slowed the process. The EPA were actually, I guess, the authority that were pushing us very hard to get on with these projects, but they've put requirements on us that have slowed the progress in terms of these projects. So we'll organise that briefing probably sometime in March.
Okay. Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the sheet, page 33, the fold-out, A3, it talks about the Station Street upgrade. And if you go to the right-hand column, officer comments, it says the Transport for New South Wales representative has assured council that the MAU will be completed in a timely fashion. Any delays from Transport for New South Wales will further affect the delivery program. Could I have an update on that, please?
I think be through to Mr. Paul.
Through you, Mr Mayor. The short answer is that those discussions are progressing well. There are, I think, 2 notices of motion to the next council meeting requesting that a formal report be brought to council. That will happen. I expect that council will have a report probably to the second meeting in March that will update council on where we're at and how we need to move forward. And I would also suggest that there are a couple of matters that council needs to confirm its position on so that the project can proceed.
Will those reports, Mr Paul, include the associated projects such as car parking and the like on Kirkham Road and those costs there, acquisition of land, the like?
No, not related to this project.
Well, they are. We've been constantly...
No, hang on.
Kirkham Road is a project that's been approved under council's operational plan and budget.
Car parking in Kirkham Road.
Councillor Scandrett, can you please let the officer finish?
Well, as councillors are aware, Kirkham Road was a two-stage project. The northern end of Kirkham Road.
not what
Can
I
I
said.
finish? Can I finish?
Mr. Mayor, I don't want
Councillor
to waste Mr. Paul's time.
Scandrett, I am asking Mr. Paul.
I am talking.
I am asking Mr. Paul to
you'll
finish
waste the time
his
of this
comment.
committee.
Mr. Paul.
As I was saying, the Kirkham Road upgrade project is to be completed in two stages. The northern end of Kirkham Road has been completed, as councillors are aware. The southern end of Kirkham Road, the contractor is on site as we speak, and the project is underway, and we expect to have that completed before the end of June this year. As I said, both of those projects were included in Council's budget and operational plan as distinct projects. So in my mind, they're well documented and well understood. And as I said, the southern end is underway. In terms of the Station Street project, as I said, there'll be a comprehensive report coming to Council, in my mind, the second meeting in March. I don't think I can get it to the first meeting. I'll try, but more likely the second meeting in March.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. That's not what I was asking.
Okay, well, what's your question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was asking about the land that we moved to acquire for Station Street car parking, or if you wish, Kirkham Road car parking, not the project Mr. Paul's talking about, which does involve car parking allied to Station Street because it's formalisation and it was conditioned. It was. But anyway, it's the acquisition of land known as the Village of Bowral, right, which is in our council business papers, and we moved to acquire that land.
No, we didn't move to acquire it. Mr. Paul, with clarification.
Look, sorry, Councillor Scanner, I now understand what you're asking me.
Thank you,
I
Mr. Paul.
apologise. I wasn't quite sure.
Accepted. Thank you.
Okay. What you're talking about is there's a council resolution for staff to enter into negotiations with a private landowner for a property that is adjacent to Kirkham Road. The short answer is that those negotiations were not productive, so they haven't continued, and the landowner has been written to and said that council is no longer interested in pursuing that opportunity, and we've moved on.
Right, well, that represented about a $10+ million just for the building of that multi-storey car park.
No,
please,
you're
I have a
making
question.
statements,
Everyone wants to
Councillor.
shut me down. I'm
No,
asking
I don't
questions.
want to shut you down. What I want you to do is
Honestly, I can't get a word out, and you talk over me.
Councillor Scandrett,
You talk over me, Mr. Mayor.
I make the comment that when you make statements and it's being live streamed, that you are making statements that are not true.
Is it not correct, Mr. Mayor, that we allocated a provision of over $10 million to build a multi-storey car park on the Village of Bowral land, and a undisclosed amount to acquire that land because there was an estimate which was in confidential, but suffice to say, you might have been thinking of mid-teens.
No,
is that not correct?
That is not correct. That is not. No, it is not correct.
Well, ask Mr. Paul.
No,
Look, the Mayor is 100% right. That is not correct on both counts.
Well, what is the correct?
Look,
I'll answer the question.
No, I'm going to answer this because there was, and Councillor Turland has shook his head then, I can only shake my head in agreement with him. The monies that you are talking about was a proposed car park down in next to the Bowral Fire Station when we were looking at that back in the early 2000s.
No, I'm not.
There was never a figure put in relation to Kirkham's Road.
$10.5 million for
Councillor
building a multi-storey
Scandrett,
car park.
I'm going to shut you down.
Yes, I know, Mr. Mayor, you like doing that. Thank you.
Councillor, Mr. Paul, will you please put your position in?
With the greatest respect, Councillor Scandrett, there was never a figure of 10 million or 10.5 million put forward by staff for a proposed project there. I believe that figure may have come from you, not from council staff. Yes. Council has made no provision in its budget anywhere for the acquisition of that land. Council made no provision anywhere for the building of a multi-storey car park. What council did was, council passed a resolution for council staff to enter into a discussion with a landowner to see whether that property, one, was for sale, and if it was for sale, at what price. That's all council did. And as I've said, those negotiations were unfruitful in terms of trying to move forward with that request from council, so those negotiations have been ceased.
Councillor Nelson.
Thanks, Mr Paul. It's good to get the facts. Look, my question's having regard to the recent bushfires and also recent heavy rainfall. Will they substantially affect the progress of any of the planned works that are discussed in this report?
Through you, Councillor Nelson, Mr Paul.
Look, councillors, the big issue for us, I guess, with the bushfires is not so much to our build infrastructure. We do have damage to our build infrastructure, particularly at the northern end of the Shire on Wilson Drive. A lot of signs have been lost, guideposts, some guardrail. Thankfully, we've been had the benefit of a number of councils actually coming to our assistance in recent weeks. Council have had a crew from Liverpool Council out there over the last couple of weeks, and they've been out there replacing guideposts and putting signs in, etc. We've recently this week also had some support coming from City of Sydney. So in terms of the built infrastructure, we're still making a claim through the NDRA funding for things like the guardrail, etc., and what doesn't get done by the support from the other councils. Where we have got a big impact is damage and fire affected trees. Now, a lot of that work that's been done to date has been done by contractors. There has been a big impost though, particularly on some of our supervisory staff and also our tree officer, who has spent a lot of time out assessing those fire damaged trees to determine if they are at a level where they need to come down and prioritising that. And we've taken down those trees that have been a high priority. So that has been an interruption to normal business. In terms of roads, drainage and that sort of part of the infrastructure services team, whilst the fires were on, yes, that certainly impacted in terms of staff having to close roads and do all those sorts of things, but I don't see that being a major impact at this point in time on normal operations. We're yet to really understand the amount of damage out on Wombi and Caves Road, so that's something we're yet to actually understand the full impact, so that could have an impact. Really the big issue for us in the last week or two has been the rain. That has been a significant impact. We have had hundreds of trees down, literally hundreds. So that has required a lot of call-outs, a lot of after hours. That's impacted on staff because we have to give them time to actually a 10-hour break before they come back to work. So that has been an impact. I mean, the rain's been lovely to have, but it has caused some damage. There is still a lot of trees that have been, if you like, sawn up and pushed off the side of the road, but we haven't had time to go back and actually clean up the mess, so to speak. So that's something we've got to schedule and build into our program. So at this point in time, I'm not expecting major impact, but it's like everything, it does make life a little bit harder.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Turler.
On page 33, the Civic Centre, what's the contract price for that work? I know what it is, but I'm asking a question.
Dorothy?
Yep.
Look, I can't quote the exact figure. Again, it would be in our contracts register and it was reported in the December meeting of council in the minutes. I think it's about 6.8 million.
That's right. I thought about
Yeah.
6.9.
Okay.
The finishing date for that?
Look, at this point in time, we're aiming for the end of this year. That's the contract. So it depends on weather and all those sorts of things, I guess. But yeah, that's the schedule at this point in time.
The difference between 6.9, 6.8, I think it was around 6.9 because it was 60,000, didn't it? And 9.26, that money's been allocated and that's just money in the bank stored at the moment?
Look, Councillor, there's been significant costs to get it to the starting line. There's over $1 million worth of engineering, architects,
I understand all that.
Sort of thing. So that's got to come out of the 9.2 million. There's a contingency amount in there also, because whilst we have, I believe, a very good contract document and there was extensive engagement with contractors before the actual tender process.
Disclosure,
so they understand the complexities of renovating a 50-year-old building, as you would as a builder.
Yep.
So we've got a reasonable contingency in there to deal with the things that will
Unknowns.
stick
Yep.
their head up.
Okay, the question on Station Street, you did a great job on the northern end, I'm sure the southern end will be good as well. So that's one comment. The second comment on that is the...
Sorry, what's the question?
The
consistent.
MOU,
yeah.
when will that be signed off? Any indicated time, date?
Look, councillors, that's a confidential discussion I'm having at the moment with Sydney Trains. I am heartened by the positive way those communications are going, and I expect a resolution of that very shortly.
Okay. The sale yards, or the SRLSE, that's grant money, basically, the 5.2 million. I understand that's quite clear. But when will we be going out to lease that, particularly before we do the work or after that work's completed?
Look, councillors, I did indicate last year that I was intending to go out to tender for the operation of the SRX in the first quarter of this year. My view is now that I think we need to park that for a little while. Why? Because in my belief, any potential operator of that facility out there will want to see the main part of that facility in terms of what it's going to be, the yards that is, and we're still finalising the specifications for that because we've had a lot of consultation and there's been a lot of engagement with the sellers out there and the agents and transporters and all that. We want to make sure we get that right, and I think we're at the point now where we have got that right, so we'll be going to tender shortly. So it's my view, I think, that we need to sit on actually going out for an expression of interest or tender process for the operations until we've got that locked in.
The reason why I ask that question is because the end-up tenant, or lessee,
Yep.
will want to actually have some input into what they believe is right, because they're going to take the risk from there on. What you've got is the sellers actually dominating, in theory, what they want, but they're not taking responsibility of the building. The building might have a 10 or 15-year lease on it, and they're going to have no say to what they think they need to make it work. That's why I'm getting at the question.
Yeah, look, I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Turlin. The company that we are using to do the design work is one of the two big players in sale yards in Australia. So they have a very strong track record. They not only design and build sale yards, they also operate them. So I believe that through that process and through the very detailed engagement we've had with vendors out there, agents, and as I said, the transporters, I think we're going to get that right. It's like everything. We were being asked to build basically a $10 million sale yard with a $5 million budget, and we had to bring expectations back to where the budget was. So I'm pretty confident that what we will put out to market and what will be built will meet the needs of a future operator. But what I'm saying is, I agree with you that the future operator will want to see what it is that they're actually going to lease before, they would commit to a lease. So that's why I think we need to park the actual process of going out to expression of interest for that for a few months.
And just on that, Councillor Turl, and it's a fair question, the agents who are obviously the users of the yard more than the vendors, they have been consulted extremely extensively, and they are very happy with the company that is going to do the renovation. So if you can get the agents on side to work with council in a positive manner, which has been done, and they're happy, then I think with Mr. Paul's comment, the outcome is going to be very satisfactory.
Yeah, I just don't want the end-up tenant to come back and say, oh no, I want to change this, and it's going to be I'm going to take 6 months rent off because I want these changes, or I want you to pay for the changes. They needed to be involved in the whole picture. And the plan is the picture, which you could go out to tender on the plan. So this is what we intend. This is where we're going to start. It could be brought into the game now. You could go out to tender now. That's the reason why I asked the question.
Thank you. Councillor Scandra.
Mr Mayor, could staff confirm that when we authorise negotiate on that property at the Village of Barrel, that part property, and hang on, I'm asking a question. Here we all go again, asking a question.
Okay, ask the question.
Thank you.
Can I ask councillors to refrain from
Thank you.
making any comment about Councillor Scandrett's question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So could staff confirm that when we resolved to pursue acquisition of that through negotiation, as I recall the words were, and if not successful, move to acquire said property, has that resolution ever been reversed? Could staff answer?
Probably as such, but my comment is, if it hasn't, and that resolution hasn't been acted on within 3 months, then the resolution can be brought back under a different frame. So my feeling is that council have acted on the resolution, and there is no resolution from the resolution.
What I'm trying to clarify, Mr Mayor, is that if negotiations have been unsuccessful, the second part of that resolution was that we move to acquire that property, which we have the powers to do, and has that resolution been reversed?
Again, I'm happy to answer.
No, it hasn't lapsed because it covered that 6 month period.
You've asked the question.
Thank you. Let me hear the answer.
Please.
Again, through you, Mr Mayor. Look, the simple answer to Councillor Scandrett's question is no, that resolution hasn't been rescinded. What I would suggest is that I will tidy that up in the report that comes to Council in March.
Okay, so it will not be acted on. And you've been told today that it is not going to be acted on.
Yes, but I guess I was asking, in a way, why haven't we acted on the acquisition when it was already authorised?
But that's been explained earlier on. Councillor Scandrett, Councillor Turland.
I think
I'm sorry.
would have been for the Deputy General Manager and the General Manager to negotiate, and that was it. And if it didn't negotiate, nothing happened. It's all done and dusted.
Thank you, Councillor Turland, for that clarification as well. Thank you. I'm looking for a resolution. Now, Councillor Whipper.
Please let Mr Paul make a comment.
On what?
On that.
Well, look, again, through you, Mr Mayor, to clarify, there have been a number of confidential briefings with councillors about the progress of Station Street, and I'm certain, in those briefings indicated to councillors that the negotiations in relation to that property in Kirkham Road were not going in a direction that was going to be fruitful. We talked about alternatives, and I'm not going to elaborate any more than that, about how we could move the Station Street project forward, and they are the subject of the current discussions, and what I believe will be very shortly, it'll actually be a heads of agreement document. It won't be an MOU. For various reasons, it's been determined that a heads of agreement document is the way to go, and that heads of agreement document will confirm a way forward that I've discussed with councillors in information sessions previously in a confidential briefing.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's probably not forgive me, but I think I'll get away with it, not a question as such. Mr Paul mentioned bringing Station Street, and I just call it Station Street, back to us in March. Given that September's rushing on us, I'd really implore Mr Paul and his staff, if it was possible to get it back in that first meeting, it'd be fantastic. We need to make decisions, and the earlier the better.
Yes, there are issues that are going to have to be discussed. Okay, so you're moving the recommendation, Councillor Andrews, and it's secondly Councillor Whipper. Put the recommendation. All in favour. Those against, carried. Thank you, councillors, and on that note, I declare the meeting closed.